All right, I think we are live. Yeah. Okay, good. So, welcome everyone. My name is Mark Moykins. I am an iOS developer, and this is my live series here. And in this series, this is an actual series that I'm doing that's live. It's called SwiftUI Views. SwiftUI Views Live. And I plan on doing this where we take a topic and then we talk about it a little bit. And then we go in and we pick some kind of random UI, and whatever it is I'm teaching, we apply it to that random UI. So it's a little bit scary, right? Because I don't know what I'm actually going to be building. But I think that adds a little bit of excitement to it because we never know what we're going to get. So how do these live sessions work? All right, let me show you something here. I actually put together a slide for you guys. Okay. So this is how it works. I'm going to ask you to pick a random number, and I'm going to give you a range. Don't pick a number yet. And then I'm going to teach you something. I don't have that step in there, but I'm going to teach, or we're going to talk about this topic a little bit. And then we're going to use that random number, and we're going to look for some UI inspiration. And that is what I'm going to take, and we're going to build that in SwiftUI using the topic or applying the topic that we just talked about. Okay, now I want to limit these episodes to 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes is a good time. Some people say they want it longer, but I like 30 minutes because imagine if you're busy, you're at work, and you're on your lunch break and you want to watch something really quick, then you can watch one of these. Sitting down for like an hour, hour and a half, that I can do that because if I have time, but I know a lot of other people can't do that. So I want to try to limit it to 30 minutes. Okay, and then the fourth thing is we're all going to hang out, we're all going to laugh, and we're all going to have fun, all right? All right, cool. So in the chat, if you can say like where you're from and what your name is, that would be really cool. Kind of like introduce yourself. And I am having a problem with live chat right now. It says unable to connect chat. Please try again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh this page, and hopefully it doesn't end the stream. I've never done this before, so bear with me. I hope it still works. There we go. All right, good. All right, chat is back. Hopefully I didn't disconnect anyone or disconnect myself. We have Stuart. We got Buggy Man. Yami Yugi, which I think, is it Tim? Yeah, it is Tim. Yeah, right there it is, right there. Tim from the Netherlands. We got Scott Smith. All right, cool. All right, welcome guys to the channel, and let's jump into it. So first we're going to talk about shadows. And the reason why I started I even picked this topic was because I found something that I thought was really cool. And this is sort of like a trend, a small trend, but I've been noticing it more and more in UIs. And I found this on Dribble, and I really like this UI. I love the depth that this designer, Stan here, created with this UI. Oh, nice. We have someone from Russia. We got Raheel from Pakistan, Nepal. All right, cool. Oh, Buggy Man is from the UK. All right, cool. And so I really like this UI. And that made me want to explore shadows a little bit more and how to use shadows to create this level of depth in UI. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's jump into Xcode. We've got Marcel from Germany. Welcome, Marcel. I know it's late for a lot of you guys, and I really appreciate you staying up for this. It's noon my time. Okay, so let's jump into Shadow. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics. Let's start with this one right here, this circle. Now, if you want to add shadow, then you just say shadow, and that is your shadow modifier. That's a basic shadow modifier. You can give a radius, and think about that as like I wouldn't say depth. I would say how much the shadow is spread out, from the center going out, or from the edge going out. So we have 8 there. I usually start with 8 for a lot of things. I think that looks good. Now, you notice when you zoom in on that shadow, I did some research on this, and it's about 33% opacity. It's not a solid color. You can create solid color shadows. I'll show you how to do that. And that requires a different initializer for shadow. So if we come here to shadow, and if you want IntelliSense to come up on something like this, when I back up a little bit, I just hit Control Space, and it brings up the other initializers here. So we can apply a color to shadow here, and let's just go with gray. Say gray, and then we'll go with 8 again. And then for X and Y, that is like an offset. If you want the shadow to go down, go to the right, to the left, then you can do that too. Actually, what I'm going to do, if you want a solid color shadow, then your radius will have to be super small, like a 1. And then, watch this, when I apply a Y to make it go down, now you see that that shadow is more solid, right? You can probably even go smaller than that. I've never tried 0. Will 0 work? Yeah, it looks like it does. So there you get an actual solid shape for your shadow, and then you can offset it with X and Y. Okay, levels of depth. How do you create this illusion of levels of depth, like this guy here? You can definitely see when you look at this, it actually looks like they're on different levels, right? Nice. We have Rabin from Nepal, Juan from Spain. Thanks for joining me, guys. Okay, so let's explore that, how to create those different levels of depth. Now we're going to start with this circle right here. And let's say shadow. And let's just go with the basic one for now. Let's see how that looks. And there's 8. So you can see there's a little bit of shadow behind it, but it doesn't look like it's that much pulled away from the background, right, from the UI. So what can we do with that? Well, the best way I found is to use the other initializer, hit Control Space, and then the color here, that's optional. We don't have to supply a color. Let's use 8 again, and this time we're going to offset it. So imagine this. Imagine you're shining a light on your UI, like a flashlight, and depending on where you hold that flashlight, if something is up from the surface, it's going to cast a shadow in a certain direction. So we can pick a direction, and if we say like this is our UI, and we are shining a flashlight from here, then we want the shadow to go down a little bit, right? So let's try that. For X, I'm just going to, what's happened here? There we go. For X, I'm going to say 0. X is right and left. For Y, though, let's try 10. Okay. Now, when you look at this, it looks a little bit more 3D, where there's a light actually coming up from the top, and it's casting a shadow on the bottom. So that's how you give it a level of depth. Now, if you compare it to the circle next to it, you can definitely see more of a difference, right? And so the offset makes a huge difference. So if we go back to 0, 0, then it's a little bit harder to see. It looks a little bit three-dimensional, but it doesn't look like it's coming off the screen as much than when we had some offset applied to it. Okay, so let's copy this. And let's apply it to these other ones here. Okay. Now, if we try to apply more offset to it, I just want to give you an idea here. So we're going to offset this by 10. And you notice, compare the first one to the second one. Now the light is shining from a different direction, right? So what I recommend is when you create a UI, it's okay to have that shadow go wherever you want, but you should keep it consistent. You should have them all go from the same direction. If that light source is coming from one direction, then all the shadows will go in the same direction. Now what you could do this. Say the light is pretty close to the center of the UI, then you could actually, let me just show you. It'll be easier to show than explain it. Okay, we're going to go minus 10. Oh, that's minus 20. That's okay. Okay, now look at this UI. When you look at those 3 circles, what's the impression that you get here? It looks like the light is in the center, is so close to the UI that it's spreading outwards, right? So these are some things to keep in mind. I want to give you guys some ideas of the illusion that a shadow can create on your UI. And when you look at this too, that center one doesn't look like it's as high up as it is with the other ones. So you might want to increase the radius. Like we can try doubling that, and maybe that'll help compensate for that. Yeah, not too much though. So there's something else too. When your radius goes up, the color, the shadow gets lighter, gets more diffused. So it's like the opacity is increased, but it's just that transition, that gradient of, going to clear, it doesn't show up as much. So what you might want to do in that case is actually apply a color. Now, let's just look at something else too. Okay, so we have 8, and let's change these back to 0. And then, for Y, let's go down. So we'll say, let's go with 5s. 5, 10, 15. So here's another way to create a level of depth is basically just changing that offset, the Y offset. You can do it with X too. I'm just using Y because it's just one value that we can compare. And you notice when you look at these, so as you go to the right, like this circle right here looks like it's further off the screen, right, than these. So you can control that. The radius didn't change. The color didn't change on the shadow. The only thing that changed is the offset. So you can use the offset to give it more depth. Okay, let's talk about colored shadows. Let's go down here. So we can definitely apply shadows to these guys. And we can choose the same color. So this first one is pink. So let's choose a pink shadow. And radius, I'll stick with 8. I like to just start with that as my default. And we're going to go 8 down. So there you go. So having colored shadows, let me just do the rest of these too so you can see them all together. Oops. Okay. Colored shadows are pretty cool because it kind of gives you that illusion that the back of the circle is pink, right? Like look at the first one. The back of the circle is pink and the light is shining, bouncing off the background, hitting the bottom of the circle, and it's showing this color that comes from the circle itself. So that's another thing that you can use on buttons that kind of gives it a glow or like a reflection of light. You can kind of simulate real world reflections, I guess you could say. The thing about this that I want you to be careful about is you have to definitely test it against dark mode too. The thing that I found is you don't want a shadow that's so strong that the edge of your shape, it gets lost in it. So sometimes what you might have to do is lighten up that color a little bit. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, what I do is I usually have the color inside my asset catalog as a named color, but we can do it here too. So if you want to lighten up this color, this is a pretty easy way to do it. You can use a different initializer for color, and you can say color literal. Start typing in color literal, and hopefully it comes up. It's not. Come on, guys. Where's my autocomplete here? Maybe it's in here. It's not working. All right. Well, you can apply color literal. Color literal is a UI color. So let's see here. Let's try this. Yeah, UI color. No, see, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let me try it again. Okay. Usually see it right in the IntelliSense. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's change that back to pink. Let me try it with a property, and then we can just copy it. Let color equals. No. Man, I just created a video with this too. Okay. All right, well, skip it. So color literal, it's something that I actually learned from Meng 2. He taught me how to do that. And it's really cool. You just, there's an initializer. Normally you can just do color literal. It comes up in your IntelliSense right here. There it is right there. Okay, good. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Color literal. Oh, okay. By the way, the guy from Russia, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm not familiar with those. Can you put like in a, like a regular alphabet, like how I would pronounce your name? Okay, so there we have color literal. I'm going to hit enter, and then it creates a color right here. Now we started with pink, right? So I'm going to click this other button, and I'm just going to grab that pink. And then down here you have opacity, so you can tone it down. We can start with like 50% and see how that looks. If I click resume, it should give me a live preview as I adjust it. Yeah, that might be too much. Let me increase the opacity there. Yeah, that looks good. Andre. Okay, good. Thanks, Andre. All right, so there we go. So you can lighten it a little bit. And really, your main goal here is to not have your shadow blend in with your object, blend in with your shape. We could probably lighten up these colors too, but I think you guys get the idea. So I usually do this in my my named colors in my asset catalog. I'll lighten the color up a little bit for dark mode. And sometimes I lighten it up even more for light mode because I want it to be very light. Okay, so enough with shadows. I want you guys to, I should have had you guys do this before, but I want you to pick a number between 7 and 15 and put it in the chat. The first number that someone posts in there, I'm going to grab that number, then we're going to do a search, and we're going to count down and find a UI that we're going to work from and create. Now, while you guys are doing that, I'm going to show you my project setup here. So I kind of like set things up a little bit to kind of prepare for this. And one of the things that I created was some named colors. Now, this is how I normally set up my color scheme. And we have an accent color. That's going to be the buttons or the things that you can interact with. The background color. So if I want a background color for my screen, I can use that. Foreground color, that's the color of your text. Then we have a secondary and tertiary colors. Those things are optional. And you can supply them or you don't have to supply them. At a minimum, you should have an accent color. If you don't have one, then you're just going to be using blue with a white background or a black background, the default colors. But if you're creating a UI, try to pick a unique accent color that stands out, that catches people's attention so they know what to do on your screen. Okay, now I have those colors set up here, and I set them up for light mode and dark mode. And then I have this other file here so I can easily access those named colors. The only reason why I have this is because I don't want to make mistakes when I'm trying to type in the name of the color. So this is off the color object. So all I have to do is type in color.theme, and then I'll see all my colors. I prefix all of them with the word theme. So I want something in common amongst all my colors. You could prefix it with color if you wanted to, or scheme, something like that. I like it, so as soon as I start typing in color.the, it just shows 5 colors. I just pick which one I want. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, here is the canvas that I'm going to be working with. And let's take a look at our numbers. Stuart's first one to reply. He says number 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Google here. Now, last time I used Google, but there are other places that you can go for inspiration. One of the other places that I use is Dribbble. So we could definitely go here and do a search on Dribbble and find something. We could also use UpLabs. That's another one that I like to use. When you go to UpLabs, I usually go to, Android or iOS design. I usually start with iOS design, and then I might do a search from there. So why don't we do that? We can start here, and then we can count down. Well, we might hit one of these kits, so it might not work as well. Let's just, we can use Google again. Let's try that. And to avoid getting the same set of results every time we do this, we can also search for a certain industry as well. So if you guys wanted to pick an industry, you could say travel or health or finances, something like that. For now, though, we'll just search for mobile UI. I go to images, and then we'll just count down from there. So we have 12. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, this is the one that we did last week. 11, 12. Okay, we have a login screen here. And this looks pretty simple. So I'm kind of happy about that. You never know what you're going to get, Okay, good. So we have this posted by graphics, and we're going to mimic her or his login screen. Now, what I'll do, let's do this. Let's do the one on the right, the one with the text fields, okay? So let's see, where are we at time? Oh man, I've already gone through 21 minutes. So I should have been watching the time more. I want to keep these to a half hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend 20 minutes or less doing this. I'm going to start my timer here. Horses. There you go. Soccer. We'll do that next time. I'll have you guys pick a number and a topic next time, and then we'll kind of randomize our results a little bit. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this. I'm going to put it up here so I can easily reference it. And let's start building this out. Now, there's a background here, so let's add a background. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is set my colors. Okay? Now, the accent color here, this is tricky. I find a lot of designers don't do this. They don't have a definite accent color that directs the user's attention to something, that's consistent throughout their UI. That is an Apple thing, Apple Human Interface Guidelines. And a lot of designers, they're designing for Apple and Android, so they don't have these same conventions. His accent color is just white, so it's going to be that same color for both. And you see, the problem here is, look at the text. So it says create a new account. Oh, you guys can't see this. I'm sorry. You see his button here, create a new account. That's white. And then his text up here, log into your account. That's also white. How do you know which one's a button? You have to guess, depending on the context, right? With the login screen, it's pretty easy, but you might have other screens where it's not so easy to tell. Okay, so we'll just stick with white. Our background color, we'll stick with sort of like that blue color. What I'm going to do is, let's open up this side panel here. I'll say show color panel. I'm going to use my color picker here, and I'm going to grab one of these colors. That's going to be my background color. I'm going to use the same one for dark. What you can do is you can hold down Option and drag it over and just drop it. Then you have it for both. For text color, I'm going to leave it with white and black. So I think that's all we're going to use for colors for this example. So let's work with what we have here. Whoa. A bee just flew in here. I don't know if you guys saw that. I left the door open just a little bit. All right. Okay, we're going to start with the background. So I'm going to hold down Command, and I'm going to click on text that we have here. And I'm going to click on H stack, V stack, doesn't matter. I'm going to change it into a Z stack in the end. Now we have a background color. So this is where my theme comes in. I'm going to say color, theme, then I'm going to choose background. Let's resume this again. Okay, now what I'm going to do here to cover up or to fill in those extra spaces on the top, that's considered the safe area. I want to go beyond the safe area. So I'm going to say edges, ignoring safe area, and set that to all. And then I'll go into the safe area. And then, here, hold on. I think I'll be okay. If I don't antagonize him, I'll be okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some images on here. and get all the visual components. This is how I usually design. I get everything on there first, and then I start setting up the spacing, sizing, and the general layout of things. We want this to be in a VStack. So let's definitely get that into a VStack. And this top one, we'll just say log into your account. I'm going to say into your account. Looks like we have an image there too, right? You know, maybe I can do this. I want you guys to see it. Whoops. I want you to see it as I'm developing it. So let's get this down here. Maybe we can scoot it over like that. Yeah, there we go. Oh, let me pause this. That usually takes up a lot of memory. Okay. That image, that looks like something we can get from San Francisco Fonts. So I'm going to use a system name. And then let's look that up. SF symbols. And that's probably a person. Yeah, that looks pretty close right there, right? So in order to copy that name, person circle, I'm going to hit Command-Shift-C to copy it. And then we'll go back in here, and we're just going to paste it for that argument. There we go. We have a nice small person there. Let's increase that. We're going to use a font to increase it. Usually, if I say like, if I want something large title usually doesn't cut it for me. I want something even bigger. Like if let's go back to our page there. Yeah, that's pretty big, right? And large title isn't going to get it to that size. So what I'm going to have to do is use system and right here, size. But I'm actually going to use this one down here. So I'm going to change the weight of that font as well. Let's try 150, see how big that gets. Oh, and we got to set these other things first. The reason why I want to change the weight is because I want to make it a little bit thinner. So I'm going to go with light or thin should work. Let's try thin. For design, I don't care about that. Design is like sans serif, the serif, rounded. We don't care about the design. Okay, that looks good. We're going to need some spacing and padding. Maybe a little bit smaller. Let's choose 110. Yeah, it's fine. All right, and then we have a couple of text fields on there. Now for text fields, we're going to need some state variables. So what I'm going to do, I really need to install my code snippets on here. It makes it so much easier. Private var, and then we have a username. And then we're going to have one for password too. Okay. And then we can create our text fields. And we are going to give it a hint text. It says phone, email, username. I'll just say email. Let's keep it simple. And then we need to give it what we're binding it to, right? So we're going to bind this to the username. So now if I type in something in there, it's going to update that variable. If I update the variable, it's going to update the text field. It's a two-way bind. All right, we'll just stick with that for now. We're going to, now actually, let's design it. Let's do that. Okay, so we're going to add some padding around it. And then we're going to add a background, and we're going to use a shape for this. We're going to use a capsule shape. Capsule is like a rounded rectangle, but you don't have to say the corner, you don't have to set the corner radius. Okay. There we go. So let's resume that. You should see it now. Shapes by default are going to be black. Yeah, there you go. So it's black. Let's change that to, we're going to make it a light white color, like maybe a semi-transparent color. So let's fill that. And let's change it to color white. Yeah, that's good. And then we can take that capsule and we're going to change the opacity. And let's try 0.5, see how that looks. Yeah, let's make it a little bit more solid. Let's try 0.7. Just so we can see the hint text better. 0.8. Yeah, I think, yeah, 0.7 is fine. Okay, now that we have that set up, we can copy that like that. And this is going to be password. Okay. Now, normally I use a secure field for this, so let's just change that to secure field because it's a password. And then we have our login button. So we're going to choose button. And for the action, we're not going to have any action for now. And let's just set up the contents of that button. We have a text there. It says login. Now I'm typing everything in. You guys, of course, you can use, your object browser. So I could just grab this button and drag it down, right? But I'm typing things in because I have them memorized. Okay. We're going to use the same background for this. We're going to use padding. Let me format here. We're going to use the padding in the same background. And instead of the opacity, we'll take the opacity off. Now, something very important here, guys. When you format your button, you can format the content of the button, like I did here. I'm saying this is the content, the text, and whatever else you want to put in there, icons or whatever. You can also format the button itself. So not the content, but the actual button. Now, there's a difference here, and let me show you just real quick. Let me run it. Wait for the preview to be done here. This is taking a little bit of time. Okay, because this is a 2015 laptop. Now notice when I click this button, only the text is changing, right? Do you see that? When I click it, just the text fades out. That's because what it fades out is the content here of the button. This is outside of the content, so that doesn't get faded. So what I usually do is when I create a button, I put all the formatting and everything inside the button itself. Then that way, when you click it, the whole thing flashes, and it's more apparent. Okay. There we go. Now, we probably want to stretch that out a little bit so it's the same size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a flexible frame to stretch it out. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. I like the flexible frame because it's just one line of code. And the way I do that is with max width, and I set it to infinity. So I'm telling the frame of the button that you can stretch out horizontally as much as you want until something stops you. Now, that's not going to work. You notice the blue outline stretched it out? What you have to do is you have to set that flexible frame before your background. So once you have a big frame, your background will fill it in with a shape. So let's move that up. Right there. That should be fine. Okay. Now I'm going to stop there. We have everything in place. And I'm going to start working on spacing a little bit here. With the VStack, I'm going to change that to like 20. We'll start with 20. So what I did is I held down Control Option and I clicked on VStack, and it just brings up the inspector. Yeah. Thanks, Robin. Okay. So we have 20 there. I'm actually going to increase it to 40 because we're going to be playing with shadows a little bit. And then our text, we want to make that white as well. Actually, let's finish with the spacing here. There we go, VStack. I'm going to add horizontal padding to this. And just say dot horizontal. There we go. That looks good. Now let's start experimenting with shadows a little bit. Oh, I said I was going to change the foreground color, right? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to change the color by changing it on the parent. When I do that, no, I'm not going to do that because it'll also change it for the text fields as well. I'll just apply it directly to the text that I want to change. So let's change that here. I'm going to set foreground color, and I'm going to use my theme. There you go, theme, foreground color, and it is white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. We're going to change the color of this logo too. We're going to make that white. And if it's a San Francisco symbol, then foreground color will work just fine. And I think we're good. We just want those two things. Now let's start working with shadows. We really want to practice getting some depth on these elements. We can apply the shadows to the text fields and to the button. Applying it to the logo, let me show you what happens. It might look kind of funny. Okay, we'll say shadow. And let's just start with a normal one here. I'm going to make it 10. So it actually doesn't look that bad. I thought it'd look worse. Now it does definitely bring it off, but sometimes, like when I see shadow on text, it makes it actually harder to read. I try not to apply shadow to text. I try to usually apply shadows to shapes. When you apply shadow to text, like I don't like that. That's my designer side of me. Like that. So it just, I don't know. To me, it doesn't look as clean. I will apply shadow to text if it's like text on top of an image. There's a lot of stuff going on with the image, and maybe there's a white parts of the image that the text can get lost in. I will apply a shadow to that, and because you can't really notice the shadow, and it makes the text more readable. So we're going to skip adding a shadow to the text. I think it looks okay on the image, so let's do that. And what I'm going to do, let's use the other override here, or not override, the other initializer. Let's not worry about the color. And for radius, let's start with 10. And for X, that's going to be 0. And we're going to experiment with these. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create 3 variables, one for the radius, one for the X, and one for the Y. Hey, welcome, Stefania from Latina, Italy. And we also have Dan O'Leary from Minneapolis. We have Manra from Richmond, Virginia. Welcome, guys. By the way, Italy is one of my favorite countries. It's probably the country that I've visited the most. I keep telling my wife about it. She's never been there. So we plan on going there after my daughter graduates from college, or from high school. Okay, 3 variables. Private var radius, and we'll say that equals 10. And we have X, I'll call it X offset. And that'll be 0 for now. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm going to have shadows on all these elements, and then I want to be able to change these values in one place and have it change for all the shadows. And then we'll have Y offset. And for Y offset, let's start with 5. Okay, now let's use all these values here. We'll have radius, if I can spell it, X offset. And when are you coming to India? I've been to India. I've been to Hyderabad. And yes, it was hot. I went for someone's wedding. One of my coworkers, she was getting married. It's quite an experience. Okay, good. So what do we have here? It says it's having trouble with something. I usually get this error when there's too many things. When I have too many views, like I reach the 10. No, that should be, is it my last thing I added was the offset. Let's see if that did it. Let's try again. You know what I might have to do is I might have to supply a type to those variables. It might be thinking the types are ints when it needs something else. So what actually does it need? Needs CG floats. Okay, let's make those CG floats. There you go. Should be easy. Okay. Let's try again. All right, good. That looks like it's working, but there's there's no shadow. So why is that? Let's try something here. Is there a shadow? No, I don't think there is. Let me try to hard code the value. Yeah, that works. So why can't I? Is that a reserved word? All right, let me try to give it a different name here. Shadow radius. Could have been a reserved word. Anyway, that works. So let's just grab that shadow, and we're going to add it to the rest of these items. Oh, yeah, let me show you guys something here. This will be interesting. You guys are going to learn something. Okay. Let's take a look at that button first. I think we're okay with the our design inspiration here, so I'm going to close that. Now, let's zoom in. Yeah, this looks fine. And let's run it. I want to see something with the text field. It's easy. It's populating that because I didn't change it over to password. All right, let's change that. That's copy paste for you guys right there. Okay, now here's something that you need to watch out for. It actually looks okay here. A lot of times when you add shadows, like for example, say I took this shadow off the button and I added it to our VStack, thinking what's going to happen is it's going to add a shadow to all my elements, which will happen. But what'll happen is it'll add shadows to things you don't want. So you can see some of the shadows are being doubled, and it's adding a shadow to our text as well. And sometimes you can get in trouble by adding shadows to things that have backgrounds or overlays, because what's going to happen is it's going to not only add a shadow to your background, but it's going to add a shadow to your overlay, and it's going to add a shadow to, if you have text in there, if you have other visual elements in there, it's going to add a shadow to everything. So normally what you have to do is you have to add your shadow explicitly to just the object that you want. A lot of times for like background buttons, you want to add the shadow just to your background shape. So let's do that. Let's add the shadow just to the capsule in this case. Now what I do here, when it comes to background, I put my background, my shape and modifiers. With one modifier, it's okay with like one line, but as soon as I start adding more, I like to break it out. And the reason why I put the shape on a separate line is just for the indenting. That's it. The indenting looks a lot better because what happens is if this capsule is on the same line as the background like this, watch what happens when I indent it. Oh, this actually looks fine. Normally what happens is these modifiers do this. And then I can't tell, is that fill on the text or is that fill on the capsule? But this actually looks good, that indenting. There was an update to Xcode. I don't know if you guys updated yesterday. There's an update. So maybe that update fixed this. That would be super awesome if it did. Let's see. Did it fix it if I add another modifier here? I'm just testing right now. Oh, I think it did. This used to just indent like that. Oh, guys, this is super exciting. Okay. All right, let's not get carried away. Let's stay on topic here. Okay, we have we have our shadow. We have it on the text fields. We have it on that image. And what we could also do, it doesn't look like the shadow is affecting the text inside the text view, so that's good. Or inside the text field, so that's good. But if it does, if you have problems with it, remember, go into your background right here and add the shadow to your capsule. So as you can see, we actually have some depth here, and that's looking really good. And if we change the Y offset to 0, so the shadow is just evenly all the way around, I don't think we need to go into live preview right now. To me, this doesn't look as good. It gives it a little bit of depth, but I really like it when there's offset. And the offset can be, just going down, or like I said, if you have a light source, make it all go from one direction. We have a Serania from Brussels. Welcome. My last name is actually Dutch, or it's not Dutch, it's Flemish, which is a part of Belgium. Belgium is split up into two different languages. You have the Dutch and the French. The Flemish, which are the Dutch, and the Walloons, which are the French. And so I'm from the Dutch side. I'm not actually from there. I was born in the United States. But my family is from there. Okay, so let's experiment a little bit. Let me guys show you one more thing before we end off. So let's add an X offset and a Y offset. And there, you notice, where's the light source, right? The light source is in the top leading corner. Now, there's another effect that you can apply with a shadow that can really enhance your UI. And that is by, instead of using a solid color background, use a gradient. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a linear gradient real quick. I'll just call it LG. I'm lazy when it comes to variable names for typing. They should be longer. At work I spell them out, but when it's personal, I really shorten them. Okay, this will be a linear gradient, and we're going to have gradient colors. So gradient, the first parameter there is just an array of colors, and our first color is going to be clear, and I'll show you why. You'll see how this comes together. And our second color is going to be our theme color, our theme background color. Now, for the starting point, if you're using shadows, we said that the light source is coming from the top left, the top trailing. So what I'm going to do is set my start point to the top trailing, and that top trailing is going to be the lighter color, which is going to be the clear color in this case. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to say top leading is actually that's the top left corner that I want. And then the end point is going to be the opposite corner. It's going to be bottom trailing. Okay, and then we're going to use that as our background. So let's change color theme background. Let's replace it with our linear gradient, and then let's resume. And there you go. So you notice, it really adds to that effect that there is a light up in that corner, and the shadow is going off to the side. So if you want to experiment with that and see how much more you can offset that shadow to really give it that experience of a light source in that corner, you can do that now. You can just change these variables, and it'll change them for all of them. So I think you get the idea of the effect that you can create with shadows. You can really separate your UI and really, give the illusion that there's a light source on your UI. And it just, makes your app just a little bit more delightful for your users. Okay, Thomas, welcome from Berlin. And let's see. I think that's it. That's all we're going to cover in this episode. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you learned some things about shadows, about layout, as I was putting that together and laying that out. And I hope I gave you guys some ideas for your UI. Now, if you guys want to do an assignment, you can do what I did. Grab some source of inspiration, do a search, find some inspiration, and just mock it up the way you normally would. Or take one of your existing screens and add some shadows like we did here. Create some variables that you can easily change and play with, and add that effect to your UI. And then post it on Twitter. I'd love to see it. When you post it on Twitter, show me the before and the after, because then I can really get an idea of just what effect you can create with the shadows. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's @BigMountStudio. Let me type it in here. Hey, you're welcome, Dan. You're welcome, Tim. There, that's my Twitter handle. If you guys want to follow me, or if you want to post something and then tag me in it, I'd love to see your work. It inspires me. Okay, great. I'm signing off. Thank you guys so much for attending and taking the time out of your day. Sorry this ran a little bit over. I'm going to try harder to make these a little bit shorter. It takes some practice. This is only my third live stream. All right, see you guys.